We got it.
Oh no, not even I got it wrong.
All right.
I don't know QWERTY keyboards.
2 minutes to find the right touch on the keyboard. Okay, let's pick this way.
Just do that.
Just for the sake.
In September of 2021, Rivian began selling vehicles with the launch of the R1T all-electric pickup truck. And not long after that, it launched the all-electric SUV named the R1S. It has been approximately 5 years since that first vehicle launched, and the brand has sold less than 200,000 vehicles combined. Now, it's not because they don't make high-quality, desirable electric vehicles. I know this firsthand. I've owned both a Rivian R1T and I currently own a Rivian R1S. I am very happy with both vehicles, and I thoroughly enjoyed my R1T when I owned it and loved the R1S that I have now. The problem has always been the cost. They are expensive vehicles. It's not that they're not worth what they cost, because in my opinion they are. The problem is that high cost limits the number of potential customers the brand can have. But that's about to change now, because I'm standing in front of the Rivian R2, their mid-size SUV that's going to start at around $45,000. Now, Rivian claims that even with this dramatic price reduction, it's still going to deliver on all of the things that Rivian customers expect: an exciting, thrilling driving experience, high quality materials, long range, relatively quick charging, everything that you want with an electric vehicle. Rivian says that even though they had to cut the price so much to get it to be more affordable, they didn't have to diminish the overall customer experience. Well, I'm out here in Utah at Rivian's R2 First Drive event to learn if all that is true. Let's get into it. First up, let's do a quick exterior walk around. But I have to tell you, I can't help but think that it really reminds me of the vehicle parked in my driveway, my Rivian R1S, just a little bit smaller. Let's take a look. I'll start up front, and man, if you didn't have this side by side with an R1S, it would be hard to tell the difference, except for the size difference, of course. There's the trademark oval headlights and light bar staring at you, and like the R1, there are air curtains by all four wheels. Unlike R1, the R2 has an integrated blinker behind the front wheels that also spells out Rivian. Rivian plans to sell the R2 in Europe, and side blinkers are mandatory there. So this neat logo/blinker integration is a clever idea. The launch edition has the 21-inch liquid tungsten wheels with all-season Pirelli tires. There's also a 20-inch black sand wheel option with BF Goodrich all-terrain tires, 20-inch bicolor carbon wheels with Pirelli all-season tires, and 19-inch machined graphite wheels, also with the Pirelli all-season tires. The side view mirrors incorporate 3 cameras for Rivian's Autonomy Plus system. There's actually 10 exterior cameras and 5 radars in that system, along with 1 interior camera for driver monitoring. The R2 has a very straight, boxy roofline, which is great for interior cargo space and bucks the trend that many SUVs in this class employ of a slanted teardrop roofline for efficiency. But this straight, boxy design gives the R2 a very masculine look. R2 also has the same wraparound taillights that continue across the back of the vehicle to create the distinctive Rivian taillight bar. And when you look at the R2 from the rear, you see that Rivian did actually incorporate a slightly sloped rear roof for better aero, but they hid it from the side profile with the integrated rear spoiler. There is a hidden trailer hitch under the cover, which gives the R2's rear a nice smooth aero look. The charge port door has been moved from the left front on R1 vehicles to the left rear on the R2. It hides a native NACS inlet, as all Rivian vehicles now incorporate that standard. All R2 models come standard with a panoramic glass roof and integrated roof rack attachment points. These mounts allow you to attach the Rivian cargo crossbars directly to the roof, which you'll need if you also want to get the R2 Treehouse rooftop tent. Rivian hasn't announced pricing for the Treehouse rooftop tent system yet, but I can tell you this thing's super cool. I find Rivian's decision to make R2 look so much like a mini R1S really interesting. So much so that later in the day, when the journalists had the opportunity to ask Rivian CEO RJ Scaringe one question, that's what I asked him. As far as exterior design, R2 looks a lot like R1S.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing. I think R1S is one of the nicest looking full-size SUVs out there. But did you start off with that in mind? Like, R1S looks great, so we just need to make a smaller R1S. Did you start with a white sheet of paper and make 6 different iterations, and you just kept coming back to this? Could you walk us through how you arrived at this design?
It's right here.
It's hiding inside. Well, developing a product is an exercise in coordinating lots and lots of decisions and lots of trade-offs. And so when we started R2, it did start as a clean sheet. And one of the things I say this all the time, and I'll say it again because I think it's so important. When you look at the completed product, it's not 10 decisions that led to that. It's truly millions of decisions that aggregate together into what ultimately becomes the product. And I say millions of decisions just to represent the scale of the complexity. But there's thousands of decisions that have big impacts on things that we see that are very customer facing. And there's hundreds of decisions that have very large impacts on things like proportion, packaging, interior comfort, those sorts of things. And a lot of the different objectives when you set out to run the program have a lot of competition that push in completely different directions. So a good example, a very relatable example looking here, especially at the side view profiles of the car, is the aesthetics of a short front overhang, which both look nice proportionally, but also assists in off-roading and approach angle, but that being in conflict with having a large crushable zone for safety. That's a very classic trade-off, and you guys have probably all reviewed cars where you said this looks proportionally goofy, and it has this big long thing hanging out over the front wheels. Another classic example of a big trade-off is, especially in an EV, is aerodynamics. And so from an aerodynamic point of view, you want to create, think of it like more of a taper, something that looks more like an egg, to move through the air as efficiently as possible. And this is important particularly for moving at high speeds, because your drag of the vehicle, your aerodynamic drag, scales with velocity squared. So it's particularly important. So there you have a trade-off of making something that's very aerodynamic versus something, but maybe it looks proportionally a little bit goofy, to something that proportionally looks right, also has a lot of functionality embedded in more of a two-box shape. And so I say all that because as we started R2, we were flexing between a lot of these types of trade-offs. Those were 2 of hundreds of trade-offs in that. And in each case, in each of those trade-offs, we made decisions that ultimately compounded to a place that we actually got to a place in the R2 program that we didn't like what we saw. Yeah. We said, boy, the sum of this isn't working. And so we actually went through 2 pretty meaningful resets to the program. Not necessarily on every part, like let's say battery or some of the drive unit work, but in terms of the vehicle packaging and the overall design approach. And arriving at this actually was where we said we had to reject some of these trade-offs and try harder. I say that with a smile, but I really mean it. And the best examples, we said we really want to have this functionality that comes with the 2-box, but we need to get to a certain level of aerodynamic performance. We're not going to have the same performance of a pure, more egg-shaped vehicle. But that led to the innovation around that aero pass-through in the back, which then, that seems like, oh, that's not so hard. But then suddenly, where do you put the wiper? So it blows up the wiper if you have a drop glass. So each one of those decisions has big ripples. And so I would say it was the 3rd iteration that allowed us to converge on making all these trade-offs in the most thoughtful way that led to what you see here. But it's very hard, and there's lots of debates, and you have like wonderfully impassioned discussions. I was just saying to someone, I wish we record more of these discussions, because it's not, the teams are like really engaged, which you love, which is like what we drive for. We're having open, honest debate, open, honest discussion, and it leads to better outcomes. But that's, a lot of those types of debates happen. And so like, you see Max, he's smiling there. He looks so friendly, but like he was chief engineering program, so he was pushing some things really hard. And then you've got Jeff. Maybe he doesn't look as friendly, but he really pushes hard on design. And so they work incredibly well together. And then I'm often the tiebreaker, but there are like big debates. And so that's how we.
Be really ugly.
Yeah.
So you didn't set out, in other words, to make it look like a smaller R1S. It arrived at that.
We went on a long journey with lots of iterations and landed in a place that has a lot of DNA from R1, for sure.
And a way to say it as well, like there was a strategic reason why we also showed R3 and R2 at the same time. Ultimately, we landed on saying, okay, we got a lot of positivity from R1. As we said, we wanted to still that down to a smaller package, and a lot of the decisions we made from an engineering, aerodynamics, functionality pushed it towards being like an R1, and we thought it was appropriate because there's a lot of positivity with R1, and R2 for a lot of people is going to be their first experience with a Rivian, so we wanted to build off of that. And when we showed R3, there was a lot of talk about, everyone thought we were going to do an R2T or a truck or something like that. When we did R3, it was really showing that we can take the Rivian form vocabulary and completely change it into a different segment, a different form factor, but it still feels distinctly Rivian, knowing that when we ultimately decided on doing R2, that it was going to have similarities to what an R1 is today.
But there's actually, can I jump off that? There's one thing that's like a good example. R2 has the benefit of like us being a more mature organization. And if you look at R1 there, you look at the rear door, this is like one of my favorite examples. On the back of the door, you can see there's a fixed piece of glass and there's a div bar. And what the reason for that is we wanted to have a full glass drop on all the windows, so the rear doors in particular. It's a vehicle to go outdoors and explore. We want to, when you're off-road or you're on a trail, you want to hear the outdoors. You want to be able to put your arm on the window ledge. But to do that, we had to have the fixed glass. On R2, one of the things we said is we want to have full drop without a div bar, without fixed glass. And so it takes out all the cost of all those extra parts. But it's a very hard packaging challenge because the rear wheel then has to be far enough back that it's out of the way of the glass. And that relative to the hip point in the rear seat needs to be such that like you open the door and you're not like stepping awkwardly into a seat that doesn't align with where the door is. And like that's a little feature where we drop like getting rid of the fixed glass and div bar. But so many different teams had to coordinate and iterate around getting things to balance in a way that allowed that to happen. And we didn't achieve that on R1, whereas we did achieve that on R2. And there's countless examples like that where we worked really hard to do things that we maybe didn't achieve on R1, but still we're capturing that full feeling, but we're doing it with less parts, less complexity, and I think a more refined design.
Thanks. Today's video is sponsored by evchargingstations.com. If you drive an electric vehicle or you're planning to, this site is packed with comprehensive charger reviews, detailed DC fast charging graphs, and the latest news from all of the fast charging networks. You'll find real-world testing, easy to understand comparison, and deep dives into how different electric vehicles actually charge. Before you buy an EV charger or plan your next road trip, make sure to bookmark evchargingstations.com and make smarter charging decisions. So before we actually get a chance to drive the vehicles, Rivian has a bunch of really talented SMEs here to tell us all about the R2. First up, we're going to sit in a launch edition R2 and talk with Wassym Bensaid, Rivian's chief software engineer, about the new R2 infotainment system. All right, so I'm here in an R2, and this is a launch edition R2, with Wassym Bensaid, who's Rivian's chief software engineer. If you watch State of Charge, you've seen Wassym quite a few times on my channel. He is one of the best in the business. I'm not just saying that because we're sitting here between Wassym and Imad Dalala from Lucid. I think they're the two best in the business. So we're getting a treat here. Wassym's going to do a walkthrough on R2 infotainment.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Super excited to join you on the channel again. Super excited to show you the R2. This is a car in the making since many years for us, and it's really leveraging on a ton of the lessons learned from R1, and then really in its essence how we can use technology so that we can take things to the next level, and we bring the same level of features that our customers loved with R1, but in tons of cases we actually even improve the capabilities and improve the performance. And I'll show you today hopefully some of these examples.
Right, and that's what's amazing to me, that this had to be your mass market vehicle. You brought the cost down dramatically. It's literally half the price of what I paid for my R1T and my R1S, but without what it appears really decontenting.
100%. And like you see it, one of the really big manifestations of that is, for example, the infotainment system. It's a great example where we consolidated 5 different processors into one single powerful system on chip, and then we moved that complexity from hardware to software. And we use an operating system where we have 5 different virtual machines running at the same time, and that allows us to cut the cost by a significant amount, but then deliver actually better performance to what we have today on the R1. I mean, you look at it, the screen looks so beautiful, the performance here of the UI is really fantastic. Wow. We have so much headroom on the R2, and this is something that we're extremely excited about. It's really part of our overall North Star and design philosophy for the R2, which is take it on us from an engineering standpoint so that we reduce the complexity, we improve the cost structure, but then in most of the cases, and especially from a technology standpoint, offer actually a better vehicle to our customers.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the infotainment.
All right, awesome. So I'll walk you through what we call the first time user experience, which is at Rivian. I mean, we obviously made the intentional choice to design our own infotainment, our own software experience, and taking a Rivian, taking an R2 is a moment that we want to celebrate with customers. So you see here, this is this beautiful interface where we have, it already knows my name because I configured my digital key on this car, and then you do a swipe, and then welcome to the world of R2. Get situated, and then we'll walk through some of the tutorials. This is the seat. We'll save the position here, but then one of the really new great features of the R2 is the haptic halo wheels, and this is part of the feedback that we got from customers, is getting some features with buttons on the UI. And then when we look at that feedback in details, probably the most common feedback from customers is related to temperatures and then to fans. So we went back to the drawing board and we asked ourselves, how can we provide that flexibility to customers, but then without having buttons all over a cluttered user interface? And this is where we came up with this completely new concept in the industry that we call the haptic wheels. And think about it as it's a software defined steering wheel. So this is controls that know the context of the menu, and then their features and functionality change based on the exact UI sequence. And not only the features and the functionalities change, but then the actual detent and the feel of the steering wheel will change, which adds really that satisfying tactile feedback. And it adds really a playful element to it, because the way you have the detent, for example, for temperature will be very different than the way you have it for volume. And it provides us also that possibility to open up for a ton of playful moments with our customers. So let me start the tutorial. This is the steering wheel. You see here, I'll push, I scroll up, I scroll down, and then this is playing with a different level of the overall detent. I push in, and then not only we can do push, but then we can do tilt left, we can do tilt right, and this is all the gestures which are possible with the steering wheel. But then what we can do as well is use it as some sort of pedal shifter. So you see here that I am activating the steering wheel from behind, and it's like, think about it as a 360 movement, and then scrolling here, and then this is the overall high level movements of the steering wheel. I'll walk you later on through some examples in specific menus. Next, this is the adjustment of the seats, mirrors, and then steering wheel. We'll skip it for now, we'll do it later. And then this is calling the R2, which is really a very important moment for every Rivian owner. Tom, you're with us, you're our guests. This is Tom's. All right, welcome to Tom's R2. And then digital key. What's really nice with the R1 is it comes with all the nice features that our customers loved with the R1. So the drive modes, the energy app, gear guard, but then also digital key and then Apple Watch come handy. I already configured my key, so I have it here on my phone. I have it here also on my watch. Autonomy, this is part of the tutorial. The R2 Launch Edition comes not only with UHF, but then with Lifetime Autonomy Plus. And then after this, welcome to R2. Your R2 is ready for an adventure. Let me now walk you through some of the UI elements as well, and really what makes this new Rivian OS 2.0. First of all, let me go back to the steering wheel here. So I'll adjust actually the steering wheel. So I'm adjusting the wheel. So if you look here, if I'm scrolling and then I just activated temperature, so it's easy, super easy access to temperature. Similarly, I can go here and I activate the fan. What you don't see, but what I am feeling is a very different detent, and that's really satisfying to feel that difference in movement between the different functions. Same thing, I can switch the view from an ADAS view to navigation super quickly from the UI here. Same thing, if I am on the left, then I will have access to volume, I'll have access to music control forward and back. And then here's the magic, I can also use the back movement, and then here I can actually switch the drive mode, and then it magically switches. So I have that one touch control through the new haptic steering wheel, so that I can change drive modes directly. Obviously all of that will be possible as well through Rivian Assistant to have that really one touch control, but like we're providing more optionality to customers, more flexibility, so that they can really enjoy the whole user interface. Now, if I look at the UI, there's elements that you can probably recognize from our R1, but then if you know R1, there's a lot of differences here. So on R1, we used to have a horizontal menu. With one of the challenges was accessibility, because some of the controls were on the very right. So this is where we changed the paradigm, and now we have this vertical menu which is super close to the driver. It also includes really some nice new features, like here for example we have access to the this beautiful weather and then predictions, and then you have the rest of your controls really super handy. Along the same philosophy, one of the really big changes that we did in the new UI is the introduction of settings, but then it's settings with a contextual menu. So if I'm in music and I click on settings, then I have access to the settings for music, and that makes a ton of difference for customers, because one of the challenges that we have currently on the R1 UI is that sometimes you have to go 2, 3, 4 menus deep to go into a certain setting. So like this is a way to completely simplify things. And then one of the really big changes from an ergonomic standpoint, if you remember on R1, the media panel is always on the right, and now we have the possibility to actually, like, it's becoming a floating panel that we can move from the left to the right. And if I'm a driver, by default, it will be here on the left, so it's way easier to access and to control when I'm driving the car. And then similar nice features, if I move to park, then it will automatically go into this what we call the quick action menu, which is, okay, you park your car and then you have the possibility to, I can open the front immediately with like a one button access. So this is really the new UI philosophy that we have, which is very much into easier accessibility and then a lot of convenience for our customers. And then really we revisited a lot of the UI elements so that we upgraded what we call the Rivian design language with a ton of attention to the aesthetics to have aligned elements across the entire UI. And then it comes with all the nice features that we have on R1. Let's say we're here in Utah, beautiful Park City, and then I want to go to San Francisco. This is something which is important for the viewers of your channel. Same convenience features. We will have our own trip planner with here it did the selection of chargers, and you see it selected chargers which are rated A from a reliability standpoint. And then like this type of features provides like absolute peace of mind for customers, so that like as they're planning their trip, we know that we are guiding them towards chargers that we trust.
And will it automatically precondition as you're approaching the chargers? We see that they're preparing batteries.
It is doing it right now. It is preparing it for fast charging. All those convenience features that our customers know on the R1, all of them will be available here. The Energy app, which is something that customers love, to give them more detailed data on, and here it is still preparing for my preconditioning. So all detailed data around the charging, around the consumption while driving, while in park, all of those features are available on R2, and even more, like some of the features that come really special for R2 that we're very excited about. We don't have it yet, but then we'll have it in future OTA, is pet cam. So this is having the possibility to using the new in-cabin camera, which is an RGB camera. We will have the possibility to monitor your pets from your mobile app and then have a live video stream that you can activate to give you absolute peace of mind. Know that your pet is not only in the best possible temperature, but then that they're behaving and they are having fun and they are well in your Rivian.
So as far as monitoring, does pet mode have to be activated, or can your, say, spouse monitor you from their app as you're driving? How's that work?
So this is really,
not that I ever do anything wrong.
I know you will never do it. But this is one of the big design considerations that we had with the pet cam. So pet cam comes with an indicator here that provides occupants in the cabin visibility into the fact that the camera is recording. Also, if it detects that there are humans, it will not activate the cam.
Okay.
And this is part of, like, really for us, privacy is so important for our brand. And we one of the cases that which are really dear to many of our hearts is really making sure that as we provide such wonderful technology, we don't have the wrong people use it for cases such as domestic violence, or cases where, for example, you would go and monitor your partner when they are in the car. So this is why we added so many controls, so that it is safe to use the feature, and it's only used for pets. So this was a general introduction into the Rivian OS 2.0. This is our redesigned music and media app. We have similar media sources as on R1, Apple, your favorite, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, TuneIn, Audible, and others. But actually what's even new here is we have the iHeart digital radio, which comes by default for all our R2 customers. So, and this is something that we're launching as well with R2.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. Looking forward to driving this guy tomorrow morning.
I'm sure you will love it though.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm here today with Vidya Rajagopalan, who's going to talk about what Rivian has done to bring down the cost of the R2, how you have consolidated different components, reduced the amount of copper. You know, we heard this with second gen R1 also, but you took it a step farther, right?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
what do we have here?
So let's maybe start on this side.
Sure.
In the second gen R1, we talked about how we migrated to a zonal architecture that enabled us to reduce wiring by 1.6 miles, which is sort of what this little ball here is supposed to represent. And in R2, we actually built on that same zonal architecture, but we optimized the design further. So we're actually able to remove another 2.3 miles of wiring, which is what this ball of copper represents, right?
An additional 2.3 miles.
Additional 2.3
Wow.
miles.
Okay.
And that was done, you know, some of it, a small portion of it, it maybe comes for free because the R2 is a slightly smaller vehicle,
Right.
wires may be a little longer. We may not have a, you know, we don't have a hydraulic suspension, maybe there's less complexity, but most of it, the bulk of it came from design. And what you can see is we really looked at how we package all our ECUs, package all the content, looked at how we connect the harnesses, really looked at it very strategically, and that's how we were able to do it. So if you see, this is the right-hand body harness of an R1 Gen 2, and this is the same thing for an R2. And if you can see,
It's
you can tell it.
significantly less. Yeah.
It's significantly
Wow,
lighter.
yeah, and I remember how much less that was
That's
than
right.
than the original R1,
Exactly.
which I own, an R1S. So
Yes.
yeah,
And
great
then in
strides.
doing that, we reduced wiring, but we reduced connectors by 60%, which then means not only are we reducing the BOM cost of this, but even the manufacturing costs, because when you're working on the line, putting things together, more connectors, more labor hours. So if we looked at it, not BOM cost was clearly one big aspect, but even assembly and manufacturing cost was something we looked at.
and weight
And weight,
and
absolutely.
reducing weight.
That's
Now
right.
you could use less battery.
Exactly.
It brings the cost of the battery down. Yeah.
Exactly. And so this, you know, we talked about all this in the context of the low voltage side, where we talked about the zonal controllers, the ECUs, all of that. We don't have the ECUs on display here because that's not the, you know, that's building on the R1 Gen 2 work. It's optimized, and so, you know, we didn't want to repeat that and talk about that story again. But what we want to show here is that we took that same concept of integration, right? Consolidation. Because on R1 Gen 1 to Gen 2, we talked about how we went from 17 ECUs to 7. Well, we did the same thing here on the power and energy side. So we took 5 of these and put it inside this.
All this is in this.
All of that is in
And
that.
are these components from R1 currently?
So these are from R1 Gen 2 currently.
Gen 2. Okay.
So these 3 are actually supplier parts, and those 2 were in-house designed.
Okay.
Right. This is the onboard charger. This is the DC to DC converter. These are DC to AC. Again, 3 supplier parts, and that's the battery management system and a south zonal controller.
Okay, so you're getting more vertically integrated.
We're getting more vertically integrated. So obviously, you know, we put it in. You save supply margins, of course, right? That's one obvious way you save BOM costs. But you also, by consolidating it, if you look at it, this as an enclosure, this is enclosure. This one has a liquid cool system of its own. This one has a different one. This one is a fan cool system here, right? So you put it all together. There's a single liquid cool system. You have a single chassis. You really save a lot on all those ancillary things you have. We also share microprocessors. You don't need to, you know, use dedicated microprocessor for everything. So you're able to reduce the BOM cost significantly by doing this.
Right.
And also, when we did this, we added more capability. So we added AC export. So we have bidirectional charging. So not only
Right.
can you charge, but you can use the AC outlet of a charge port to export power. So you can do a vehicle to load or a vehicle to your home.
And the exporting power, how many kilowatt can it export?
So this can do 11 kilowatts from the charge port itself.
From the charge port itself,
Yes,
11 kilowatts.
and so yeah, when you have you of course need a bidirectional charger
Right.
to support it.
Will
And
that
then
be
if you-
proprietary or Rivian proprietary, or
Well,
will
I
you
think
be able to
Rivian,
use?
we will be offering one, but I think, you know, we should be able to support, you know, there's nothing rocket
The
science, I think.
standards haven't been really
Yeah.
completely formalized yet, but there are companies coming out with bidirectional chargers. And I know a lot of my
right.
followers ask me, you know, will all these companies just put out their
Yeah.
own proprietary system? Is the goal to make
We'll
yours
definitely-
compatible?
We'll definitely put our best-in-class system out there,
Mm-hmm.
and we will look at, you know, what it takes to be compatible with others. And then we'll also have a, you know, grid disconnect, so you can power your home.
Mm-hmm.
So you get 11 kilowatts from here, but we've always also had a AC outlet, which is about 1.9 kilowatts. We bumped up the capability
That's
of
from
that
the outlet in the vehicle.
outlet. So we have that. This is a good example. Not only did we manage to, as I said, reduce BOM costs, but if you think of wiring, you know, the whole idea of how do you get wiring savings? You don't have wiring going to all of these
Right.
different things.
Yeah, it's all in there.
All in there. And these things actually talk to each other. If you think about it, this is a DC to DC and this is a DC to AC. Same DC goes into both.
Yeah.
Well, it's all inside.
Reducing
It's
redundancy.
encapsulated.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more reliable.
Yeah.
So this is vertical integration at its finest.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with the R2.
Thank you.
So I'm here with James Philbin, who is the SVP of Rivian's Autonomy and AI, correct?
Yeah, you got it.
What do we got here today, James?
Okay, so we're talking about the autonomy system on R2.
Yep.
So R2, the hardware and software pieces of the autonomy stack is really built on the second generation R1 foundation that we launched previously. And so like R1, R2 has 11 cameras and 5 radars. Now we made 2 important upgrades to that sensor set. So one is the cameras became higher resolution. So we went from 55 megapixels to 65. And then the corner radars, we also improved them. We replaced those radars. And those radars now can see closer to the vehicle and also further away. So both of those together are fusing to give us this really robust, more robust, richer representation, 360 degrees around the vehicle.
Right, and this is going to be point-to-point, hands-off autonomy.
So at launch, the R2 Launch Edition, which you can see behind us, will have a Lifetime Autonomy and Plus included, and that at launch will have universal hands-free. That's our hands-free system we launched last year that handles more than 3.5 million miles of road in the US. And in fact, any marked roads, the system can be engaged. Unlike some of our competitors that are using a pre-existing map to control those features, we can actually perceive them live. So anytime you can see a lane line, you can engage that system hands-free. And we've continued to develop that feature. So later this year, we'll launch version 2 of Universal Hands-Free, and that will actually actuate for stop signs and traffic lights. So that will come to a stop, and it will understand traffic lights, and that will open up the feature for more metropolitan type areas.
Right, what's your timeline for point A to point B?
So then the next thing is then the point-to-point feature. So we're planning a public rollout to begin at the end of this year. Now we want to be very mindful and cautious about how we do that. So we'll begin the rollout, and then we'll bring it to more customers into next year.
Right, and I know a lot of people had questions about the fact that the vehicle's launching without a LiDAR. But that's going to come maybe 6 months later, somewhere down the road towards the end of the year, I think was what people were talking about. But I think people were worried that the earlier models that launched wouldn't be as capable. From what I understand, the only difference is like down the road would be eyes off capability. Is that correct?
Right.
The differentiator with the LiDAR.
Yeah, so I think at Rivian, we really believe strongly in bringing the best technology to customers as soon as it's available. And this R2, it is the best technology we know how to build today. Now, of course, technology moves on and things improve, and we will bring those things to customers, when they're available. So yes, that LiDAR-equipped vehicle will be launching as actually the next model year of R2. So, but this is the best thing that we know how to build today.
Right, and
it's incredibly capable. It's capable of going up to those point-to-point levels. We feel incredibly confident in this platform being really, really great for our customers.
Yeah, that was the point that I wanted to make. I think some people thought that it wouldn't be able to do point-to-point without the LiDAR. That wasn't the case.
That's not the case.
Yeah, that was just talking about way down the road as the system gets better and better, and you start to introduce eyes off.
Exactly.
That will be the only differentiator.
There's less supervised kind of features, but
Okay. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time.
Awesome.
And good luck with R2.
Okay, thank you. All right, bye.
All right, so I'm out on the road in the R2. This is a launch performance version, the most powerful version that the R2 is going to come out with. And we actually just finished up the off-road section. I'm going to make a completely separate video of that because the vehicle did amazingly well, and I recorded so much content that to add that into this video, I think would just make the video too long. After all, I'm not Kyle Connor from Out of Spec that makes 4-hour videos. I'm sure his R2 first drive video is going to be like, you need to take a day off work to watch it, but that's all great because he makes awesome content. So I'm going to make a separate video of that, but what I will say is we drove off-road a few miles up a mountain up to about 8,000 feet. We crossed some small streams, some challenging sections. I have it all recorded, and I'm going to follow this video up with a standalone video of that. In maybe a week, I'll push that out. But overall, I have to give it an A for off-road capability, so that's saying a lot. I thought perhaps Rivian was going to have to make sacrifices with the R2 just to keep the cost down. We talked about that a lot, and that the fact that they needed this to be an affordable vehicle, but it is extremely capable off-roading, even at the price point it's coming in at. So now we're on road and driving through some winding sections here. I'm going to be getting out onto the highway soon, but I'm also making a pit stop at a Rivian Adventure Network DC fast charger where we'll do a little charging. You know, I can't make a video without charging. I wasn't able to get a vehicle with a low state of charge. I checked all the R2s available. There was like 10 of them. The lowest one was at 62% state of charge. I don't know what it's going to be at by the time I get to the charger, but probably at around 60%, which isn't low. Enough to get a good charge recording, but we will charge it to 80% just to see how it goes from whatever starting point we're at to 80%. Now the R2 has a maximum charge rate of 230 kilowatt. It is a 400 volt architecture, so it's not going to charge like a monster, but it does 10 to 80%, Rivian tells us, in 29 minutes, which isn't terrible. It's all a matter about your charging curve, more so than your peak charging rate. So with an 88 kilowatt hour battery pack, that means from 10 to 80%, it's 70% of the battery. That comes out to about 62 kilowatt hour. There's about 10% charging losses, so you're at 68 kilowatt hour, has to get replenished in 29 minutes. So that means that the average charging power from 10 to 80% is 140 kilowatt. Again, not great for 2026. It wouldn't have been great in 2024, but it is acceptable as far as I'm concerned. I know Rivian, you have to make compromises. They wanted to keep the price down. I think jumping up to an 800 volt architecture would have probably raised the price, you know, I wouldn't say dramatically, but enough that it was not a necessary move for them to do that, just to squeeze out a little bit of a faster DC fast charging time. Now, charging at home, it has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, so you could fully charge that 88 kilowatt hour battery from dead to 100%, probably in about 9 hours, which is totally fine. You know, having a 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger, you're charging at 48 amps. And as far as DC fast charging, you might spend a little bit more time at a DC fast charger if you're on a long road trip than some of the competing vehicles, but certainly nothing, in my opinion, that would make you not want to buy it, unless you really spend a ton of time making a lot of long trips, which most people isn't the case. There are some people that use DC fast chargers a lot. They're doing a lot of long distance driving, but I would say better than 90% of the folks that might be interested in the R2, the fact that it takes 29 minutes to go from 10 to 80% rather than 19 minutes is virtually meaningless for about 90% of the people. So I'm not concerned about that. Do I wish it charged faster? Yeah, I wish it charged faster. Would that prevent me from buying one? Absolutely not. I do have a reservation in, so it is possible that I'll end up getting one, but I have to convince the wife to let go of the R1S first, which she really likes driving. I don't know if she wants to downsize the vehicle, but if she gives the okay, we'll sell the R1S and I think get one of these, because I tell you, you can tell it is an iteration beyond the R1. As far as I'm concerned, just driving it, it feels smoother. The fact that it's smaller, it's a lot more tossable. Just in these turns, I mean, it feels like I can really carve them up Now these tires, these Pirelli Scorpion tires, the all-season tires on this, aren't the best tires for really aggressive driving. You can feel them giving, and if you wanted to buy an R2 and really drive it to its maximum capacity, I'd suggest getting some better rubber. They're a combination of good grip and low rolling resistance, which is what you want. You want to squeak out as much range as possible. And speaking of which, this is, as I mentioned, the Performance version Launch Edition. Let's take a look at the different versions of the R2 that Rivian's going to be putting out. All right, first up, this is the Performance Launch version, which is coming out now in spring of 2026. The starting price is $57,990. It has 656 horsepower, 609 pound-feet of torque. It goes 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. When equipped with the 21-inch tire and wheel package, it has an EPA range rating of 330 miles. When you get the 20-inch wheels, it drops it down to 307 miles. And then we have the premium version, which is going to come out in late 2026. That's going to list at $53,990. It has 450 horsepower, 537 pound-feet of torque, and it goes 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds. It's not formally EPA range rated yet, but Rivian says it's going to have an EPA range rating at up to 330 miles. Then we have the standard rear-wheel drive version, which is going to come out in the first half of 2027. MSRP starting price is $48,490. It's got 350 horsepower, 355 pound-feet of torque, a 0 to 60 time of 5.9 seconds, and it's going to have a range of up to 345 miles. And then there's the standard version with the smaller battery pack. We don't know the official battery capacity, but that's going to come out mid-2027. That's your $45,000 R2. Rivian's saying it's going to have about a 275 mile or slightly more than that EPA range, and we don't have any performance figures for it. Now, all the numbers I just gave do not include the $14.95 destination fee that all Rivian R2s have to pay. All right, so back to the driving impressions. I tell you, I do prefer this than my R1S. Now I have a first gen R1S. The Gen 2 actually did improve the suspension and has a better driving experience, to my taste at least. But this, I feel, is a step above that, which is surprising because it doesn't have the air suspension. I think it's because it's smaller and it's more tossable. Really feels light. It feels smaller than it is when I'm driving it. So I like that. You know, I don't necessarily need a 7-seat SUV, but that's what Rivian had available at the time, and I wanted a Rivian SUV. So honestly, for me, I think the R2 might make more sense. But again, defer to the wife. Whatever she wants, she gets. But other than that, you know, I'm very happy with this. It's absolutely handling the road. It's very compliant. I went over a few bumps back before I turned the camera on, and went over them nice and smoothly. The off-road capability really ate up everything that we put in its path. And I tell you, it's surprising to me that Rivian's able to bring this level of sophistication to market at the price point that they are. I think people are going to get a lot of value with the R2. Honestly, I mean, this could have been priced $7,000 or $8,000 more, and it wouldn't have been overpriced. Pass this cyclist safely. And so, you know, I know a lot of my followers commented that the $45,000 version is going to be a real base version with a lot less range, and that is true. But there is a lot of tech packed into this vehicle, and I think people are going to really appreciate it. And I think it's going to turn into the vehicle that Rivian needed. I really do. And they needed this. They needed that mid-range, mid-size SUV that can appeal to a wider range of customers. And I really think this is going to sell very well. I hope it does. I think it's worthy of it. I think if you're considering a vehicle in this class, even if it's a combustion vehicle, you should really take a look at this and give it a drive, because it's smooth. The acceleration is amazing. I mean, I'm going to just step on here. I'm going, I'll go down to 30 miles an hour. I'll go down to 30, 32, 31, 30 now. And we're at 80. So this thing romps. This is the performance version. So as I said, 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, and it doesn't end there. It has plenty of power above 60 miles an hour. And I was even able to find an appropriate off-road area to test a 10 mile an hour to 100 mile an hour run, and the R2 Performance rocked it in 7.7 seconds. So, all right, well, we are just about at the charger now. I'm going to plug it in, and we'll record the charging session. I'll charge it up to 80%, and we'll talk a little bit more about the R2 when I get there. All right, so I plugged into this Rivian Adventure Network DC fast charger at 50% state of charge. Now, this is one of the Rivian sites that has a combination of NACS connectors and also CCS connectors. Some of Rivian's sites are all NACS. Very interesting that they decided to switch over to all NACS at this point. A lot of the vehicles that are out there that are Rivian vehicles driving the majority on the road today use CCS, but all of the new vehicles that Rivian is selling are all NACS. But this is a location that has blended both connectors, which was good. We were able to plug in. So I plugged in at 50%, went up to 80% in 15 minutes. So if Rivian's claim of 10 to 80% in 29 minutes is correct, it means the vehicle should be able to go from 10% to 50% in about 14 minutes. Which makes sense. That's 40% of the battery. I just added 30% of the battery. So it should be able to add 40% of the battery in about the same time, because at a lower state of charge, it's going to accept the full charging power of 230 kilowatts. The most we saw this pull here was a little over 130, because I plugged in at 50%. After 50%, Rivian vehicles, all of them, don't accept full power anymore. And as a matter of fact, once you get above 70%, Rivian vehicles really tail off. And I noticed that with this, it was well under 100 kilowatt once you get over 70% state of charge. A lot of other EVs will hold a little bit higher, well above 100 kilowatts, up to that 80% before they fall off that cliff. But the Rivian vehicles seem to do that at around 70%. That's their charging strategy. So yeah, 50% to 80%, 15 minutes. As I mentioned on the way over, I think R2 charging is acceptable. It certainly isn't best in class. It's not even in the top half of its class. But for the amount of people that are going to rely on long distance traveling and plugging in, you know, I don't think it was probably worth them investing so much time and effort in making it charge that much faster. Do I wish it did? Of course, but this is what we have, and I wouldn't let that deter me at all from getting the R2. I think it charges just fine, especially if you're going to be like me and most EV owners that charge at home 90+% of the time. Even with R2 DC fast charging as it is, I would road trip this vehicle anytime. And as a matter of fact, in the future, I'm pretty sure you're going to see me doing just that. The R2 has a structural battery pack that is comprised of Rivian's new 4695 battery cells. And there's exactly 768 of these cells in the battery pack. That's less than 10% of the number of cells that went into the R1's large pack, which was 7,776 of Rivian's 2170 battery cells. The 4695 cells are made by LG Energy Solution and are currently being made in South Korea. However, once LG's new plant in Queen Creek, Arizona is ready, that is where they're going to be manufacturing all of the R2's battery cells. Rivian calls the drive unit for the R2 the Maximus drive unit, and it is smaller, lighter, and much more cost-effective than the Enduro motors that are used in the second generation R1 vehicles. And the Enduro motors were even smaller, lighter, and more efficient than the original motors that Rivian used for its Gen 1 R1 vehicles, and those were sourced from Bosch. I talked a lot about the size of the R2. It's roughly 186 inches long, which is 15 inches shorter in length than the R1S. It's also 8 inches shorter in height, and I think that's the most noticeable difference. It's also 2,000 pounds lighter than the R1S, and surprisingly, the R2 is 3 inches shorter than a Tesla Model Y. But it has a lot more cargo space. The R2 has 90.1 cubic feet of cargo space compared to the Model Y's 76 cubic feet. It has a very useful frunk that's 5.2 cubic feet, and the hood opens automatically, but it doesn't close automatically. Unlike R1 vehicles, you have to manually close the hood down. Now, I know there's a lot of things I didn't get into here today with this first drive review, but I promise I'm going to have a lot of R2 content. Hopefully I'm going to own one at some point in the near future. But there are things that I just didn't have time to get to. I didn't really mention the retractable rear glass on the premium and performance versions. You can press a button outside, that glass drops down nice and quickly for you so you could load up the rear cargo. You can also drop all 5 windows with one button press in the ceiling, kind of right near the rear view mirror. There's a button you press and all 5 of the windows drop down and go up with just one press of a button. I didn't really get too much on the interior. I didn't do the Autonomy Plus. Honestly, I drove it for about a half an hour with Autonomy Plus. Everything seemed to work fine, but I didn't feel the need to really include that in this because I need to spend more time with that system to really get a feel with how well it works. The sound system sounded pretty good for the time I was in the vehicle. It's got mid-woofers, subwoofers, and forced balance speakers. But again, I really want to spend some more time with it where I didn't have other people in the car to really see how well the sound system works. But first impression was that it was okay. I wouldn't say top notch, but it sounded pretty good. More on that once I get some more seat time in an R2. And I'm also going to have a video out soon with a deeper dive in the off-road driving experience. There's no way I could have packed that into this without making this video super long. We drove for a while off-road. I got a lot of video coverage of that, so I'm gonna parse that out and make a separate video just talking about the off-road experience. So that's pretty much all I have here today. I came into this really wanting to know how I felt about the brand with R2 coming out now and whether or not R2 was going to be that vehicle that actually takes Rivian to that next level, that mass market, mass produced vehicle that they sell a lot of them, and quite honestly, the brand needs it. After spending the time that I have with the R2, I do believe it has all the ingredients to become the company's first true high volume vehicle. What impressed me the most is not just the aggressive starting price, but how much of the Rivian experience remains intact despite the much lower cost. Features, design elements, and technology that feel genuinely premium have been preserved through smart engineering and manufacturing efficiencies rather than obvious cost cutting. The R2 appears to strike a rare balance between affordability and desirability, giving Rivian an opportunity to reach a much broader audience without sacrificing the brand identity that has made its vehicle so appealing in the first place. Well, that's all I have here today. If this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.